Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started then. Thank you all for joining us on the latest of our work from home webinar series. This one is on work from home troubleshooting. Bob Coppedge here, Simplex-IT, Crotchety Old Geek, all that good fun stuff. And here's the fun stuff. I'm still having, so again, what we do is we select the least important person here and give them the beta software so they can test, they can see what's going on, and that would be me. So I've got the pre-release version of Windows on my laptop, and there is one major problem, and that is you cannot do the cameras do not work inside of Teams meeting on the application, and the screen sharing doesn't work on the web. So you can't see my face. Now, some might not think that is a plus, not a minus. I'll leave that to you and yours. And we tried a workaround on it last Thursday at our security webinar, and it really didn't work well. And in fact, our recording didn't record any of the screenshots or any of the videos, just a static screen. So I apologize for that. I'm actually putting it together, retrofitting it, as it were. We hope to get that up within the next day or so. So hopefully, by not trying to do the camera thing, we're not going to have the same issue here. But I apologize in advance. Now, the second thing is we're actually talking about troubleshooting for the work from home folks. So essentially some simple troubleshooting tips and all that. And in order to do that, I'm actually going to be presenting on my laptop primary screen so I can actually demonstrate some of the techniques that we talk about, which that creates some challenges and issues as well. So this could be interesting. Anyway. Thank you all for joining us. Let's see what happens. Again, caveats as always, we're not talking about any of the healthcare stuff. I've got my opinions, don't ask. We're still talking about some low-cost free troubleshooting techniques. My sense of humor will come across probably inappropriately, and we will be sending out reminders and attachments and all of that kind of fun silliness. Today we're talking about work from home troubleshooting, and not from the IT professional standpoint. We're actually going to be creating a separate webinar for that, for IT support people and how some troubleshooting tips you can use. But this is really for your own situation, is really what we're talking about. And our takeaways are always what you should think about and what you should actually do. And here's really where we're going to go. We're going to be setting the stage as far as talking about how we're working from home, some of the technology, some of the tools. And then we're going to be talking about plumbing problems. And that's really where a majority of problems that people seem to have. And then we're going to go over computer problems and then finally security problems. And really, I would love to get some chats going as far as any questions or issues you'd like us to go into specifically, because quite honestly, it differs, and it differs dramatically depending upon what the kind of hardware is you have at your home. We're basically assuming you're working from home, as well as what it is you're trying to do, and we'll kind of go through that as we talk about it. So topic for today is working from home and troubleshooting. And especially for cases where organizations have had to go from nobody works from home to everybody works from home. And we've had a number of issues where our clients, some are more prepared than others, but are trying to hobble together a whole bunch of computers and systems and software and all of that kind of fun stuff at the last minute, and so it's not consistent, and it's not always up to date, and it's not always healthy. So a lot of interesting situations have generated from there. Here's my first takeaway for you. Do a little heads-up research ahead of time. We're going to talk about some troubleshooting methods and some techniques. And here's the problem: is if you don't know what you have when you think you're healthy, when it changes, you don't know whether or not something has just broken or it's always been broken, but you never knew. So, for example, how fast of an internet speed do you normally have? So if somebody says, wow, it's really slow, is it really slow now, or has it always been that speed, but you're just noticing? Similarly, if you don't know how much disk space you had, or if you don't know how much RAM you had, or anything along those lines. So do a little heads up research ahead of time when it's good or when it's healthy, and that way you'll be in a better position to know whether or not something's changed. Okay, so that's the one takeaway I suggest, big time. So let's set the stage. If you're working from home, that means you're up here being the home user, and you're going through your own home network, which has a firewall and usually something else put there by Spectrum, by AT&T, by whomever. So you're going through a couple of devices, and it may be wireless or it may be wired, meaning you're plugged into that stuff with the actual cable. And then you're going through the internet, and then you're either going back to your corporate data, which is through a VPN and through a firewall, or you're going to cloud-based data, which could be Office 365, it could be Salesforce, it could be some corporate resources that are up in the cloud. And you could be doing the same thing with a mobile device as well. And every one of these points could be a point of failure or a point of contention of some kind or another. And it sort of depends on what you're trying to do and where you're trying to access it from. Okay, so if somebody calls us up and says, hey, I can't work, we don't know what that means. If you can't work, does that mean you can't work and you're trying to access the corporate data? You can't work and you're trying to access cloud data? You can't work and you're trying to access data that's located on your computer? Which one of those is it? And obviously we can kind of, through a discussion, figure out where the stuff is. But if you've got an idea, that helps us a lot. So here are the problems we're going to take a look at. First of all is internet connection, which actually starts with network connection and then goes to internet. And we're talking about wired and wireless. We're also going to talk about internet speed, because that gets into the whole, my stuff is slow. And we're going to talk about disk space, multiple screens, you can read. So we're going to go through all these relatively quickly. And we're going to spend probably the most time on the first couple, because those are the ones that really seem to get the most attention or be the biggest issue, starting with internet connection. So here's our troubleshooting. Is first of all, if someone says, I can't connect, well, what are you trying to connect to? And first of all, just go to a website, go to Yahoo, go to CNN, go to Google, go to anything. If that works, then what that tells us is that this connection, your home user, out to a website is working. So just this guy is working, but something else isn't. Okay? If that fails, test other devices in your home. You can't connect, can something else connect? And if they can't connect, then we talk about restarting your equipment. And usually the equipment at home are two things. There's a router, which also is often doing a firewall, and then there's a modem. We don't need to get into the details of all the device differences, but essentially this is a picture of a standard modem, and it can be a cable modem, it can be a fiber modem, it can be a whatever. That's really, and that's often given to you by the internet provider, by Spectrum, by AT&T, by whomever. And unfortunately, they don't always look the same, but usually they're pretty much a single box with a couple of blinking lights. Okay? And again, in this particular case, you're seeing one that has an AT&T. Other cases, they have Spectrum. Some cases, they don't have they have a third party, and you have no idea who they are. Okay? And then you have the firewall. The firewall or the router. In this case, we've got a picture of a Sonic wall, and Netgear is another, or Cisco or Sonic wall, any of these kind of things. And usually these two guys work in conjunction. So this first guy, the modem, that actually takes the data that's coming to you from outside, from the internet, and then converts it or communicates it over to your router or firewall, and that's the one that then communicates with all of the devices in your home, whether it be wired or wireless. And in most cases, you're probably talking wireless. Okay, how do I know? If we look down here, and hopefully, I'm actually going to stop You should now see my desktop. Yep, it's messy. And you'll see down here, there's a little connection thing, and it's either going to look like this, with basically a quarter of a circle with several circles through it. And if I just hover, when we talk about hovering the mouse, we just cover it. And if somebody could let me know that you actually see this in the chat, I'd appreciate it. Okay. Cool, you see it. Thank you, Allison. And yes, Richard, you're less important than me in my own mind. My own mind has a lot of weird space. So you'll see two things. One is it's telling me the name of the network that I'm connected to, and I'm actually working out of the office. I'm the only one working here. Well, I'm the only one here at the office anyway. And it also tells me that I have internet access, so I can get to the internet through this connection. If it gives me either a no internet access or no connection at all, then I need to either take a look at rebooting those devices. And if I click on it, it'll actually give me a list of networks that it can find. And I should connect. And after a while, it shows all of them. And you may have to, in some cases, you can disconnect and you can reconnect. You can try that. If I had a wired connection, then it would show with a different icon. And it would show kind of like the internet cable connection that you have. Okay? Now, in some cases, you don't see that. And the reason being is because you have it fills up this part of the bar with as many icons as it can, and then it shows the rest of them. No, that's all QuickBooks stuff. It shows the rest of them here as called hidden icons. And it just means it ran out of room. So you may see the same thing there. Okay? So look here for that connection. If it's there but it says no internet access, go ahead and we're back to restarting the devices. Okay? If it shows that there's no connection, restart the devices, but also verify that other devices in your home can't connect to it either. Okay? Any question on this connectivity? Once in a while, there are some laptops that actually have a switch on the laptops that can turn off or on your wireless internet connection. So if you're not seeing that, look for a hidden switch or button. They don't do that as much as they used to, but there's still some that have that as well. Okay. Cool. The second issue that you can run into is speed. It's slow. Now, I want to stress that the question is everything slow? Because in a lot of cases, what you'll end up with is that you have a specific application that's slow, especially if you have everybody trying to get in through the corporate firewall to get to the corporate servers. And you were never meant, the infrastructure was never meant to do that. If that's the case, then it may be just that slow. So go to a couple of other, just again, back to websites. Go watch a video. It's research. Go to other websites that have a lot of stuff on it, any of the news websites. See if that's also slow. If it isn't, then you can report that the particular application is slow because that's where the resources, that's where we want to research. But if you're concerned, then go use an internet speed test. Speedtest.net is a good one. And let's see, speedtest.net, when you go to it, it's like any other website. Bring it up. And this is one where you got to be a little bit careful because some of these sites, what people will do is the bad guys will buy a website that's kind of like speed test, so speedtst.net, and I have no idea if they have or not, and it'll actually take you to a bad site that kind of looks the same way. In this particular case, speedtest.net is pretty good. You'll see all sorts of ads all over the place, and all you want to do is click on this one button called Go. And what that will do automatically is that will run a test of uploading data. It'll first check to see how quick we can access, and then for downloading data and then uploading data. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but instead show you. This is an example of what we ended up with for the office here. Here's the ping, how easy we're able to find devices on the internet, and then our download and upload speed. Now, run this a couple of times and note the speeds. Really, it's the download and upload that's important. And run it during a day where there isn't a problem, okay? Because, again, it gets back to, you want to have a baseline. If your speed is normally this, then it's not a problem. You're running a business as usual. If the speed is usually twice as fast as this, then you have a problem, but you don't know what it is. So you just run on the go, and then once you run on the go and you run it a couple of times, mark down those numbers when you're not having a problem. Okay? So, your takeaway, your homework before you get into this situation. Richard, this is the only circumstance under which I'm fast. Normally I am very, very, oh, you mean the internet connection. Anyway. So, know where your home devices are. Gets back to here. One of my favorite comments is, the worst time to learn CPR is when someone's having a heart attack. The worst time to try to figure out where the internet devices are is when you need to reboot your internet devices. So try to find out now. And if you have any questions, take a picture of them, email it to me. I'll tell you whether or not they're the internet device. Okay? So know where they are. Okay? Also, do a couple of speed tests. Do them now. Do them during the day. Do them in the evening. They're fun. Yay. And just mark down what the speed is when things are quote-unquote normal. All right? And know that. And then also I talk about the task manager. What is the task manager? The task manager is essentially a list of here's all the stuff that's going on right now on your computer. And if we just right-click down here where there's nothing on the bar, and I'm going to select Task Manager. And I think you should be able to see this as well once it comes up. And I only want to show you a couple of things here. And you may come up with this view, which just shows you here's all the stuff that's running. And if you click on more details, though, you'll notice it tells me right here, CPU, memory, and disk. And nobody cares about the numbers right now. We care about the percentages. So right now you can tell that my CPU, which is the brains behind the computer, is running at 96%. All right? So my CPU is busy. Similarly, you can tell that my memory is almost all used up. So right now, my computer is under a lot of pressure, and that's okay. The disk, not so much. The disk isn't that busy right now. And if I know what those numbers are normally, if I'm having a problem, I can make a note of what's going on. And in this case, I'm not going to go into the whole details of you can kill this task, you can kill this task. Part of this is when you're talking to somebody who's trying to help troubleshoot you. And especially if they can't connect to you because of the problems, you can tell them how busy the CPU is and how busy the memory is. And again, figure out what that is normally when you've got a whole bunch of nothing going on, so you know what the difference is. Again, take that baseline. Okay. Another thing, multiple screens. Back in the day, I remember I was actually working at a contract, this would have been back in 2003 or so, working at Kent State, and I saw my first examples of a person having two screens. I thought that was the stupidest thing. That was the dumbest thing for someone who needs more than one screen. I mean, come on, you're compensating. Boy, was I an idiot. Now I've got 3 screens here. I've got 2 or 3 screens at home. I really hate just using one screen. And if you're not remembering how to do multiple screens, you just hold the Windows key down and press the P. Okay, it's technically for projecting. Deborah, yeah, first time, and it's amazing how many things that when you first see something, you're like so almost outraged. Oh, why would anybody do that? That is so, and then you find out. So again, I'm not sure everybody can see this, but essentially, if you lose that screen, or if you want to project to a second screen or the like, you just hold the Windows key down and the P for project, and it'll show you the options. Again, whether you do duplicate, extend, or second screen only, first screen only, but it's that keystroke, Windows and P. Okay. Another thing to keep in mind is if you can figure out how to connect with your ISP, because in some cases it's not you, it's the internet connection. You need to call them, and if you're having internet problems, sometimes, especially if you're storing your accounts or your password stuff up there, you don't have, it's kind of like going to fix somebody's doorbell and you rang and rang and they never came to the door. Well, that's because their doorbell's broken. So put your ISP contact information over to the side. Got on that. And let's see, what else do we got? As far as security goes, the security is, again, you need to be really sure that the people that you're talking to, anybody who connects, any events come or any pop-ups come up, that you are extremely careful and cautious about that. The bad guys are out in force. The bad guys are absolutely coming up with new and creative ways to trick you into sharing information, sharing configurations, all of that kind of fun stuff. So make absolutely sure that, even if it's to the point where someone from your corporate office asks them for, whether it be, call the corporate number so you can call their extension, do whatever. You absolutely want to make doubly and triply sure that you're making sure that they're the right people that you're talking to. And honestly, are there any questions that anybody has as far as things that we want to talk about? One other thing while I'm waiting for the onslaught of questions is take a look at the icons that are down here over in the tray and look for X's. Almost all of these guys will come up with X's to show you when they're not working. Okay, be careful on that. Now, when they say they're not working, unfortunately, it could be a number of reasons why not. That's something, so if let's say, for example, if I go into OneDrive, I think I can do this. So I'm going to pause for 8 hours. Now you'll notice that the icon's changed. Now there's the pause, and if I hover over it, it tells me it's paused. Most of these you can actually hover over. They'll give you an idea of what's going on. And sometimes you can just resume and it'll come back. ICQ, would I recommend that? So you're talking about the connectivity tool? Okay. Here's the challenge. We all want to communicate. ICQ is an old style method of, I'm trying to remember, didn't it start in Israel? Anyway, it's a messenger for video calls, group chats. It's kind of like the old school Zoom, if you will. Every tool that you use is going to be either incredibly easy to use or is going to have security and costs associated with it. And it gets back to some of the things we talked about with the triangle, whether the costs versus time versus features, and you can't bump one up without sacrificing the other two. Yeah, so Zoom has taken a huge hit recently because of all of the security holes. And a lot of the security holes is, I don't want to call it laziness, but it's basically people are not taking the time to cut down on some of the openings, all that kind of fun stuff, or they want everybody in the families to get together and there is no common security element or security methodology through them. I haven't really, boy, it's been years since I've actually used ICQ. I think any of these tools, any of the major tools work. I think Zoom works great. I would, however, never, ever share anything meaningful in Zoom, ever. Both from a video, from a picture, from a file standpoint, anything. Teams is great. Teams is also secure and it's encrypted, but it's a little harder to set up for some of that. ICQ, can't speak to that. Screen Connect, all of those kind of fun stuff. They've all got their pluses, they've all got their minuses, if that makes sense. Any other questions? Cool. So this was essentially, if you do need help, one of the things that we're basically saying, there's the link there. You could schedule a 30-minute call with me to go over any of these things or anything else you've got going on, because we are here to help. And as always, we would love to get feedback on how well we're doing on these things. And on Thursday, we're going to talk about some Office 365 tools that you didn't know you had. There's a whole bunch of 365 stuff there that people are not aware of, and we're going to try to let people know. Deborah, with all the schools using Zoom, is it easy for people to hack in through the camera? It's not so much the camera, is Zoom by default allows people to just join into the meeting if they know how to get in. So the easiest thing to do on Zoom is to essentially, when you set up a meeting, to configure it so that people they're not automatically let in. If you put it so that they're not automatically let in, that essentially is going to block a lot of the people who are just jumping in and taking over meetings. As far as the hack in through the camera, it really gets down to what other kind of communication or things are people putting in. So you've got, third party. So for example, we use some tools that allow us to manage and monitor our client systems. And we could configure it so that we could take screenshots. I don't think we have the ability to actually take over the camera, but some of the tools do. Now, if you look at it from a monitoring or a management standpoint, especially since I can't manage my own camera, some of these tools do have that option of us monitoring or managing these cameras. So if we abuse that, it's kind of like who watches the Watchmen. The same tools that allow us to prevent other people from taking over this stuff often give us the ability to take over this stuff. Eek. Now, let's take that a step further. Right now, a lot of the bad guys are trying to hack into MSPs, which we are one. Because if they're able to hack into our tools, then they would be able to use our tools to get into all of our clients. Okay? So it absolutely is there. And Richard, good comment. That's why we have, and we actually give them away. We have the little slider things that are blocking the camera, so physically blocking the cameras. So we use those, we give them away, and we use those constantly. So mine are even though, well, my camera works fine on Zoom and anything else, but we're absolutely, I keep mine absolutely closed except for when I'm having meetings. When I'm doing something. How safe is Google Meet? Google stuff is not bad, but it needs to be configured. There are some people who are overly enthusiastic about how secure and safe Google stuff is, and there are people who are under. Again, it has to do with how easy, how are you configuring this stuff, and really, how open are your meetings? If your meetings are open for the general public, anybody can come and join. So this meeting, for example, we're not, we don't care who you are. We let anybody join the meeting because we want anybody to join the meeting. However, you're not joining as presenters, and we are controlling what you can or can't do. Similarly, you can't do that same sort of level of control and also do screen sharing and console sharing and all that. You can't do that. You can do kind of one or the other. So, any other questions on this? Cool. And also, absolutely keep your stuff patched. Keep your stuff patched. All right. Okay. Well, thank you all for coming up. Again, we'll see you on Thursday with 365 Tools. We would love to hear any ideas or for additional topics, because we've only got next week, and then we're either going to do some repeats or we'll come up with some other stuff. But please send us some topics. So in the meantime, thank you all very much, and see you on Thursday.